Hello and welcome back to Module 10, Managing Large Classes. To be more specific, I'm going to analyze the causes of conflict in large classes and the different ways in which conflict is manifested. Then, I'll talk about the strategies that teachers may use for conflict avoidance in large classes. Now, let's start with the manifestation of conflict in large classes. You see, common problems in large classes are noise, disciplinary problems, and lack of cooperation. I'll talk about each of them in more detail now. In terms of causes of noise in large classes, we can recognize two different kinds of noise that occur during language teaching: communicative noise and disruptive noise. In general, many language learning activities result in a certain level of noise which is created as a result of communicative nature of the activity. Such noise is natural and indeed necessary to language learning. Nevertheless, we must recognize that noise can be disturbing to those teaching in neighboring classrooms. So, every effort should be made to ensure noise levels do not rise too high. Two typical causes of disruptive noise in a large class are unclear and unheard instructions and shortage of resources, for example, textbooks. Imagine you are teaching a class of 70 students, and students in the last 3 rows don't hear your instructions properly. Students in the rest of the room start working on the task, but the noise level rises as the student who didn't hear and ask others to repeat the instructions. Or imagine a single textbook has to be shared among 6 students. Inevitably, only some of the students can read comfortably. The others may start pulling the book to get a better view, and arguments may develop. Alternatively, students at the margins begin to engage in off-task talk. As a result, the level of disruptive noise rises. So, what are the strategies for reducing noise? First, establish ground rules. At the start of the course, discuss with your students the problems caused by excess noise, and together with them, establish a series of ground rules for reducing noise level. You might want to display this on the classroom wall and remind students of them from time to time. Second, give individual reminders. If a group or individual is making unnecessary high level of noise, move close to them and remind them of the need to keep noise levels low. It is often the case that students are so engaged in an activity that they don't realize they are making too much noise. And finally, remember to give clear instructions. To avoid the disruptive noise that results when students fail to hear instruction clearly, you can give instructions both orally and in written form, on the board or on a piece of paper handed to each group during group work. You should also speak clearly and use simple, unambiguous English. And after giving instructions, check whether everyone has understood and clarify anything that is unclear. If instructions are complex, give an example of what is expected or ask a small number of students to demonstrate at the front of the class. Now, let's move on to disciplinary problems. So, What are the causes of disciplinary problems? As in most activities, whether it is a football match or driving through a city, the interaction between individuals in a classroom is governed by rules. The ways in which the teacher interacts with students and the students interact amongst themselves are not arbitrary. There are norms of acceptable behavior. These norms may be imposed by the teacher or preferably developed collaboratively with students. Everyone must know what they are and understand their purpose. Disciplinary problems arise when individuals or groups fail to abide by the rules. There are a variety of reasons why this may occur. For example, students are unaware of the rules or have forgotten them. Or students did not agree to be governed by the rules. Then, what can be the strategies for reducing disciplinary problems? For one thing, as their teacher, you should establish ground rules collaboratively with your students. At the start of a course, take time to involve your students in writing ground rules for acceptable behavior. If students are involved in the writing of ground rules, they will generally observe them. And the other strategy that really helps is to remind your students of the ground rules regularly. Next, let's talk about the problem of lack of collaboration. This can be seen when carrying out pair and group work in large classes. You see, many language activities are carried out in pairs or small groups. If used effectively, pair and group work increases the involvement of students in the class and helps the teacher manage a large class. However, the success of group work depends on the involvement and cooperation of individuals in the group. In the absence of a cooperative culture among students, it is likely that the group will fail to achieve its objectives. It is also likely that only a few group members will be actively involved, whilst others sit passively or indulge in off-task activities that may be disruptive to other students. Lack of collaboration can be seen in whole class activities. During whole class activities, students work as individuals. Interaction is most often with the teacher rather than with other students. And as a result, the teacher has a very significant role. The following are two typical examples of whole class activities. First, the teacher provides information or explains a concept to the whole class. Students listen and perhaps take notes. Then, students carry out the same task at the same time. For example, listening and filling the blank spaces while the teacher reads a text. In a word, in whole class activities, the teacher is at the center of the teaching-learning process. If the teacher loses control, the class will quickly descend into chaos. So, how can you as teachers manage whole class activity effectively? Remember that in whole class activities, you must strive to have the attention of all the students at all times and to ensure that all students are actively involved. You will be more likely to engage students if they understand the purpose of what they are learning and the objectives of the class. Start each class by sharing your objectives. Ensure that you refer to them at the end of the class when you review the lesson. In addition, you can use the following communication strategies. First, speak loudly and clearly so everyone can hear you. Second, write clearly on the board so it can be read by all students, including those at the back and sides of the room. Third, move around the class so you focus on different groups of students. Don't fix your gaze on one part of the class. Fourth, remember to check students' understanding by asking appropriate questions. Next, remember to encourage participation from different parts of the class. When you ask a question, allow time for all students to think about the answer before asking a student to respond. Also, you should encourage students to speak up. If you stand away from the student, you will encourage him to speak up so you can hear him. And finally, don't forget to monitor closely for symptoms of boredom, particularly by fast learners. Try to have an additional, more challenging question or task for those who finish quickly. What about managing group work effectively? As mentioned earlier, many teachers believe that pair or group activities are the solution to all their problems in large classes. However, if not well planned, pair or group activities can create problems. Below are some proposed strategies for managing group work effectively. First, limit group size to a maximum of 6. If there are more than 6 students in a group, some students on the margin will probably get distracted. Second, use a familiar method for forming groups so the students spend as little time as possible doing this. For example, give students numbers, then ask those with the same number to form a group. Third, ensure that the group activity requires working together and sharing. Avoid the possibility that students can sit together in a group but do the activity individually. Fourth, give clear instructions, ideally in both written and oral form. Fifth, train students in giving feedback and peer assessment. Sixth, ensure that both individual and group efforts are assessed. Plan group activities in such a way that it is possible to assess individual contribution as well as group performance. And finally, you should use creative ways to gain students' attention whilst they are working in groups. To summarize, in this video, I've talked about causes of conflict in large classes and the different ways in which conflict is manifested. I've also mentioned a number of strategies that teachers may use for conflict avoidance as well as strategies to boost cooperation in large classes. In the next video, I'll talk about increasing student involvement in large classes. Thank you for watching.